This podcast is brought to you by BERT Intelligence. Take back your Mondays with BERT Intelligence, the publisher BI platform that turns chaos into clarity. And now, with their new product, BERT Leads, publisher sales teams can uncover hidden gems, recapture lost opportunities, and upsell deals with intelligence. Stop guessing and start closing. Sign up during May for an extended trial at BERT.ai/AdTechGod. That's BERT.ai/AdTechGod. This podcast is brought to you by Adelaide. Media verification and measurement are undergoing major disruption. Legacy players are pivoting to performance advertising, AI is reshaping brand safety, and attention is replacing viewability. Adelaide is leading this shift with AU, a new way to assess media quality that scores placements based on their potential to drive attention and outcomes before your ads run. Think of it like a credit score for media. Finally, a clear view of quality before you buy. Take the guesswork out of your investment strategy and try Adelaide AU on your next campaign. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. I'm Ari Paparo. I am joined by Eric Franchi. Eric, how you doing? You recovered from Possible?
I'm doing great. And yes, I'm recovered from Possible. It took a week. I had a crazy flight back. I got home at 2:15 the morning of Thursday. Yeah, so our pod, I never mentioned it.
Yeah, a lot of people had a hard time getting back from Florida. Was it bad weather or was it the Newark thing or what?
It was the Newark thing. Yeah. Down a runway, down air traffic control signal, just down bad, as the kids say.
Yeah, I mean, for all the people listening to this who are in ad ops, it's like you're the air traffic controllers of the ads. So you got to come to work, man. You can't like just take days off and hope the planes land. So hopefully that's inspiring for you, how important. So we have an interesting show today. So last week we had David Kostman, who is the new CEO of Teads, longtime CEO of Outbrain. And sort of coincidentally, we didn't really plan this. We had interviewed Adam Singolda, who is the CEO of Taboola, their arch rival. And we decided to sort of repurpose that interview and put it as our guest for this week's podcast and hear from him because he has a very different story. So David is talking about multi-formats, video and banner ads and other things all on the same page. And Adam is a little more inventory agnostic, and he's talking about performance no matter where. And these companies who used to be sort of mirror images of each other are really taking different paths. Eric, do you think that makes sense for Taboola to be thinking about performance and outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, of course. There's the largest walled gardens are built on driving outcomes. And I think it's, very reasonable to think there should be a open web equivalent or an open web competitor to it. So I think it's super cool that Taboola is going after that. And then also fascinating as, kind of a longtime observer of these two companies who were for a long time quite competitive, super competitive, almost merged to take two such divergent strategies in 2025. And we said this last week. I think, just the story has yet to be finalized on Outbrain, now Teads versus Taboola, but it's neat to see, the moves that are being made.
Yeah, absolutely. And later on in the news section, we'll talk about AppLovin's monster earnings. And I don't think Adam said this, but I think the goal in some sense is to become the AppLovin of the open web, or at least someone should have that goal to be able to deliver performance at scale across platforms. So I think that's kind of what he's shooting for. In housekeeping, so Marketecture will be at Cannes. Big surprise. We're still working out the details, but we'll definitely be having a party. You'll probably see me with a hat walking around, maybe with the camera crew interviewing some people. If you want to be involved, reach out to me or to Jeremy or ATG or whomever. We're all very easy to reach. And tell us what your Cannes plans are and how you think Marketecture could help you. All right, so with that, let us jump right into the interview with Adam. Welcome to Marketecture, where you can get smart fast with in-depth interviews of technology executives. I'm joined today by Adam Singolda, who is the CEO and founder of Taboola. Adam, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been on the show before, probably one of our earliest guests, but we want to find out what's new because you've been making a lot of waves with new product announcements, new pronouncements about the company and its direction. There's a product called Realize I want to learn a little bit about. So what's the latest with Taboola?
First of all, the latest with the industry and like kind of the world we're in and the macro is that there's a big shift towards performance advertising and outcomes and measurement and attribution and any permutation of the same decision, which is we need to know what's going on with our money and we need to drive sales and growth to the business. Because for the last 4 years, the world has been fairly complicated,
right?
From the pandemic to recessions to, wars and a lot of different things. And I'm not sure there's ever a comeback. Maybe the world is just complicated. And if that's the case, businesses big and small, when they look for growth of their business and hiring employees and all those things, performance advertising is an even more important and strategic kind of part of what they want to do. And especially when you have kind of new entrants, you have Uber generated more than $1 billion last year from advertising, and Netflix is showing. So now you have this whole new kind of generation of companies that, when you and I got into this industry, it was not the case. And all of those folks want a strong foundation of performance advertising revenue. So that is kind of like, I think it's a macro change. And in that vein, we would realize, what we realized, no pun intended, is that we did a good job for advertisers and publishers around native advertising. For those who may not know, native is primarily those bottom of article ads that look like, they mimic kind of organic recommendations. So they're in stream, like an Instagram feed of sorts. And what happened is that a lot of our advertisers and a lot of advertisers who just did not work with us thought they wanted more. They felt like search was capped out to some degree, especially with the inflation of Gen AI. The less search results you can present because you have Gen AI, there's an inflation in price and surge in price and less value. And social, they start seeing diminishing returns. So there's a need in the industry for who else can drive performance. So we saw that. And then publishers, native is a great business, no doubt. It's about 20% of publishers' revenue, but that too was not enough.
Right.
And for those two reasons, we felt like advertisers want more from us, publishers wanted more from us. And to be honest, we wanted more for us too. We wanted to go after we estimate it's like $55 billion of performance advertising market. So for those reasons, we launched Realize.
Right. So yeah, the outcomes era is what people are calling it. And I think that the content recommendation business was always very much about outcomes, right? It was about CPC, CPA, or ROAS. So let's talk about Realize. What is Realize and how is it different from the core, the original business? I don't want to call it the core business, the original business.
Yeah. So look, it's an adjacency to what we've always done. Taboola is known for performance advertising partner. We generated last year almost $1.8 billion of performance advertising budgets. No one has more conversions than we do outside of the big platforms. So we're known for that. And what Realize now does, the net new kind of like of Realize is, one, you have a whole new kind of like demand, right? So you can upload display formats. You can upload social formats. You basically, you don't have to anymore be specialized with us. You can just tell us, here's what I already got. I already work with social. I already have a display partnership with someone. Just take what I got. One. Two, run my stuff anywhere I get performance. And by the way, maybe I don't want bottom of article. Maybe I'm a big enterprise brand and I want to be on my own. I don't want to be next to anyone else. So I want to get net new supply. So Realize now is connected to all supply that we have on our publisher sites, as well as, some of our bigger partners like Microsoft and Yahoo and Apple News and Apple Stock. So now we have net new demand, display and social. We have net new supply, which is more than just bottom of article. And we offer performance pricing.
What does that mean?
So that's really cool. Let's say today you're buying $100 million of display and you pay a CPM of sorts and you want to get performance. With Realize, you actually can pay on a CPC basis. So you can we're bringing the performance culture to a traditional industry of ad tech. And we're saying, you can just pay us when someone clicked on it. That's how good we are. And that's how good you should expect us to be. So we're saying, you can pay us like you pay search, like you pay native. And now how you're going to pay in this $55 billion market. So we're bringing that to with Realize. That's new. To my knowledge, I don't think other folks are doing that.
So it's CPC though, not CPA or CPL or anything.
It's CPC right now.
Yeah.
And over time, we may introduce other kind of like performance metrics, but this is really cool. You can upload your display campaigns or social campaigns.
Yeah.
Literally click a button and it's there in Realize. Choose the price. If you want to, you can also let us choose the CPC for you, but you still only pay based on CPC. And we have a lot of audience opportunities. We can get into that as well. And essentially, it's beautiful too. It's a gorgeous, new, beautiful platform.
Gorgeous platform. You heard it here first.
That is easy to use. So all of those things.
So would it be fair to call this an ad network, or would it be fair to call this performance DSP, or something in between?
I think it's none. I think it's more of a walled garden, but open, because we have our own supply. We have our own supply. We have our own demand. Taboola is not. All of this is kind of like, it's kind of a full stack system.
Right.
Ad networks tend to not have demand. DSPs tend to not have supply.
Okay.
We have both.
Right.
So we only bid on our own publishers. These are the best
that's
publishers.
Important information. Yeah. So it's like a hedged garden. It's your supply that you have relationships with, right? And some of that is proprietary, like Yahoo News.
Yeah. In fact, we only bid where we have basically an unfair advantage.
Right.
So think of it as we have unique first-party data. We have something that if you bid from the outside on our publisher, it's not fair to you. It's great for the advertiser because we know that Adam was here yesterday. You read about a Lego article, or you read about the example I gave yesterday at the NASDAQ at our Investor Day is that when I moved to New Jersey from New York, and that was a great decision.
I'm sorry.
Obviously.
Sorry about that.
That was a fantastic decision. My wife may think like you, but now she's convinced. It's been 3 years. So when we moved to New Jersey, one of the most important decision was how can the kids enjoy being in this beautiful New Jersey place, and we wanted to buy a trampoline. So I was reading about trampolines, the most expensive one, the most affordable ones, up and coming ones, and so obviously I was in market to buy a trampoline. And in many ways, the analogy I'm giving here is that this intent on our publisher means a lot to advertisers, maybe more than my profile on Instagram. So we're only bidding where we have first-party data, where we have conversion data, where we have some sort of an advantage to the advertiser, which we hope bring prices up and pay publishers a lot more money.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So I have a couple of follow-up questions. First is, so this system is not bidding through RTB into any other exchanges?
No, zero.
And then
we don't have advantage.
Yeah.
We don't need more supply.
You don't need more
supply. There's no lack of supply.
Yeah.
We'll take it, but I'm not against more. I'm just saying. And by the way, when we do want more supply, we really want it to be great for advertisers.
Yeah.
So we want ones that can perform.
And then second related question is, on the other side, Taboola has been a seller on a RTB to DSPs for many years, right? One of the largest sellers. So is that still available, or is there some inventory that's not available through that?
No. You're always, if you have, if you want to buy through a DSP, that's completely fine. It tends to be about 10% of our overall revenue.
Right.
And that is because you just don't have access to our first party data and our conversion data. We generated last year north of 500 million conversions, performance, people buying stuff. So you don't have access to that, but it doesn't mean if you want to do it, that's fine.
Right, got it. So what types of advertisers find this appealing? I think that the content recommendation business often got a lot of lead gen kind of advertisers and folks who wanted a click and a quick one page conversion. Tell me if you disagree with that characterization. But who's looking for this kind of click based conversion?
I think anyone. So every and any advertiser who spends now in EdTech at large, SSPs, DSPs, affiliates, and is trying to get an outcome should consider Taboola. Anyone, any dollar that goes anywhere in the open web through any channel, any pipe, and their goal, that marketer says, my goal is an outcome. I have an acquisition cost in mind.
Right.
They should try to realize and see if they can get a better price per acquisition, which means, so that's one. And two, we think that, and that means again, direct to consumer, automobile, financial services, we're seeing great results across the board. And we also estimate there's about $30 billion of social dollars that are seeing diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Essentially, out of the entire social market, the way usually what advertisers tell us is at the very beginning, it performs really well and it's actually below their acquisition goal. And then it gets a bit more expensive, a bit more expensive. It gets more expensive than their goal. The average is still okay, but there's a portion of that spend that is above the goal. It's more expensive. And that money in aggregate is about $30 billion, which we think we can provide better value to the advertiser and, which is really nice, pay publishers.
Right.
So, if we do a good job, we can bring up to $30 billion back to publishers.
And let's talk about publishers for a bit. So you made a huge splash, I guess it's been over a year ago, when you made a deep deal with Yahoo. I want to hear what sort of inventory you get from them as part of the deal. And then there was a second splash with Apple News where you became, participant in their ad ecosystem. You can give me more characterization. Some people totally freaked out about that, thinking like there was something nefarious about it. I'd love to hear, the current state of those two sources of inventory, how they help your customers and what the relationships are like.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, we're very honored to work with many great companies around the world. And definitely, the partnership with Yahoo and working with Apollo and Jim Lanzone and Matt Sanchez and Rob Rilk and Monica. I mean, these are startup people that are looking to do big things. And that's fun for all of us because I think Yahoo independently, they have a lot they can do on their own because there's so much growth there. And then together, I feel like we can, as partners, can do a lot more. And we have 30 years to go at it. So we're definitely...
You're going to hand that deal to your children.
Yeah, so I'll be here. But what's happening is that you have a bunch of people that want to do a lot and are in it to do it. So it's very fun and exciting for all of us to kind of think big and break things and go and try to create a lot of success. And look, advertisers love Yahoo. Sure. It's an incredible source of supply. Again, if performance is important to you and you want objectives that you can measure, then this is an unbelievable amount of loyal audiences that go again and again and again. And for us, that's incredible because, again, as we're trying to become the performance advertising kind of alternative to search and social or beyond search and social, that is awesome to have access to that for the next 30 years. So we're on the homepage, we're on mail, we're on a bunch of different places that advertisers really like. Yahoo partnership also came with great advertisers.
Right.
So Yahoo is a great advertising business, and those advertisers now can buy Yahoo through the Taboola technology and get a lot of success. And moving forward, there's an opportunity to get those Yahoo advertisers to kind of also enjoy the rest of the Taboola network.
Yeah.
So again, we're still, even though, we're already a year and a half or two into it, there's a lot to do and we dream big here. So that's that. And of course, we're very honored to work with Apple, which is really amazing for me as to open my iPhone and see Taboola on my iPhone. We can't speak too much about the partnership here, but I can just tell you to be in this industry and to partner with a company of that nature is just, you have to pinch yourself sometimes to remind yourself that it's real. And I think there's a lot more in the future.
Right.
For us, because you see, here's the thing. Many companies, Fortune 1000 company CEOs and board meetings are having an advertising meeting. Like they have to answer to the question, what is your advertising strategy? All of them. There's no world in which the first line of EBITDA for Amazon is ads. Netflix shows ads to 70 million people. Uber makes more than $1 billion in ads. Spotify is a big, and you're just sitting there letting it pass by. So you're all having an advertising meeting. Advertising is the new pink.
Yeah.
And I think in that world, do you want to invite someone you might be afraid of, or do you want to invite Taboola, who's a very good friend? So we're being invited to those because we're never going to compete with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's great positioning. Were you surprised when the Apple news was announced? There was some negative sentiment around the internet around it, probably mostly from people who had no idea who you were or what your company was. Did any of that reach you? Do you have any feelings about that?
I heard mostly good things myself, and I always assume that when you're doing great things. You always, if you're doing something that matters, you always get people that also, have other opinions. And that's fine. I mean, our culture was always around, we'll never bash anyone. We'll just want to create value for clients,
sure.
So that to me, it's part of building something big.
Speaking of bashing, before we started recording, we mentioned a company that used to be, I guess, your rival, Outbrain. And I only bring them up because you said something interesting about diverging strategies. So without
Right.
saying anything negative, obviously, about Outbrain, they're a great company. I have friends there. Can you just like maybe explain your point of view about how your two companies have diverged in strategy, with them acquiring Teads and you going into the performance side of things?
Yeah, but they're my friends too. So and I would never say, I never did say anything bad about anyone. I don't
Of
think that's a
course.
good culture in any case. So, and I think this industry needs as many good companies as we can to drive value outside of the platforms. So we should all be saluting any advertising company that's trying to do something good outside of the
Absolutely.
platforms.
Absolutely.
So as a reminder that while we all compete, we want a very, very successful ecosystem that's growing outside of search, social, and some other platforms. So in any case, that's a reminder. But I think, what happened is that Taboola, we're just laser focused on being the best in the world in one thing, which is performance advertising. I also think that's where the world is going. I suspect in 5 to 10 years, branding is always an important piece of the funnel because it's when you warm up curiosity and people consideration to things. But I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis on attribution and measurement and things of that nature, which probably means a lot of new startups in the space that will help justify that money is being well spent. So for us, and personally, and I can tell you also as a founder, I think it's really hard to do two things really, really well.
Yep.
It's actually really hard to do one thing well.
Yep.
And so for me to imagine that we can be the best in the world of performance and at the same time, the best in the world in branding is not something I think we can be. In fact, I think Google had to buy YouTube to have a video TV, CTV business. And beforehand, they were only performance. And outside of YouTube, they're probably still only performance. So I think it's just really, really hard. And so one, I think it's just a very different state of mind and opinions. I think Outbrain took the point of being a full funnel, and we took the strategy of being performance. So that's why in many ways, now that we're so focused, I guess both companies on demand, they sell to people that want to probably optimize for viewership and viewability.
Right.
And, high top of the funnel metrics. And I want to make sure you compare me to Meta and search.
Yep.
So we have different KPIs and different metrics for success, and that's fine.
It's really interesting that you, as of a couple of years ago, you were almost carbon copies of each other, competing on every single deal, and now you've diverged so much. So it'll be an interesting case study. We'll check in a couple of years where everybody is. I guess I have to ask an obligatory question. AI. How does AI fit in?
Of course. Otherwise, that would be a weird podcast.
It'd be a weird podcast if we didn't talk about it.
Yes, I think AI touches many different things for our business. Realizes AI through and through. I mean, from the generation of creatives to the most difficult part, which is matchmaking between consumers and specific offerings. That takes a lot of data and a lot of matchmaking. I can tell you, and I said it also yesterday, at the end of the day, there's a part of AI, the LLM portion of it, which is kind of commodity. I can, we've seen it with DeepSeek. I can download an open source LLM, compile it, buy an NVIDIA chip, and I'm in the market.
Right.
So what sets winners from losers? What makes me a winner and you a loser, or vice versa? And I think where it's going, a lot of it is going to be who has unique data that is unique to them and who has distribution so they can create, ecosystem and value that is hard to compete with. And we have both. We have so much first party data, which we train. We use AI that, again, is in many ways, many people can get access to the model, but we train it against thousands of advertisers generating conversions. So that the next time an advertiser comes, we say, by the way, we've seen people that want to buy pizza oven. We know how they behave. So that to me is, it's all AI for us. We have 400 engineers and most of them work on that. And then on the publisher side, I'm very optimistic, actually. I think most publishers have yet to truly adopt AI in any significant way. Most of our publishers, there's so much opportunity for us together to personalize homepages, personalize article pages, increase pages per session from 1.5 to 2 and 2.5 and 3, to change design based on preferences, to create new formats. There's a lot to do.
Right.
And that is, to me, just a lot of opportunity. So the way I think about my role in this ecosystem is not just to create revenue for the open web, but it's also to drive audience growth to it.
Yeah.
So we're spending a lot of effort. You and I talked before this podcast started about Taboola News. Taboola News, for those who may not know it, is where you buy an Android device and we are your news aggregation service offering your news from publishers. Or you may have Line. If you live in Asia Pacific, Line is the WhatsApp of Asia Pacific. So if you use Line, we may show you a news recommendation. So we have so much great content that is something people like that now we can use that in a way that's relevant for you to drive traffic back to publishers. So we see ourselves, as the, as a company that needs to not only drive revenue with Realize, but also drive audience and engagement growth to our partners.
It's pretty funny that you're making a business out of news, and Google just recently put out a study saying that they make zero money on news, but they're not monetizing news.
I'm guessing a lot of the revenue of search, first of all, most of the revenue is search, and I don't know enough about, to speak about Google, but I'm guessing a lot of the revenue comes from high intent search queries.
Yeah, of course.
And that pays dollars versus less. So that's probably true. I'm sure it's still a big business for them, the news part, but in comparison.
It's really not. That's the thing. They don't make much money at all on news. All right. Well, I usually do a lightning round. I'm not going to do that. I'll just ask you the one question, which is your new product, Realize. If Realize was a animal, what animal would it be?
An animal. I can tell you, maybe it would be a Marvel character, a Daredevil.
Okay.
It would be someone that, is a new character that has many, senses everything, gets a lot of different signals and is able to beat the bad guys and create a lot of value. So,
all right.
I like that.
I'll take it. All right, Adam, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by AudioHook, the leading independent audio DSP. AudioHook has direct publisher integrations into all major podcast and streaming radio platforms, providing 40% more inventory than what could be accessed in omnichannel DSPs. What's more, AudioBook has full transcripts on more than 90% of all podcast inventory, enabling advanced contextual targeting and brand suitability. AudioHook is so confident that in addition to CPM buys, they offer the industry's only pay-for-performance option where brands can scale audio and podcasting with peace of mind knowing they are only paying for outcomes. Visit audiohook.com to learn more. That's audiohook.com.
Hey, everybody, and we are back with the refresh, the news of the week. So on the docket for this week, we got a bunch of things to talk about as it relates to Google. So proposed remedies from both the DOJ and Google, a little bit more Google news around competition and search with Apple, earnings, a new entrant in the Lumascape, and a little bit more if we have time. So, all right, let's go from the top. There are proposed remedies. There was a 3-step remedy from the DOJ. And then also 3 steps proposed by Google. How about I'll roll through them and then get your reaction?
Sounds good.
Cool. So 3-step remedy from the DOJ. So number 1, force Google to give competing ad exchanges and servers real-time access to AdX bidding data through pre-bid. Number 1. Number 2, share the logic, the code behind DFP. And then number 3, potentially fully divest AdX and DFP. But if 1 and 2 cause the market to, kind of like reach equilibrium in terms of increased competition, they may not roll that one back. So reaction to this from the DOJ.
Yeah, I think this is pretty straight up the middle. A little surprises here. So I think it's really a 4-step process, even though they call it 3, because the first step is spin out AdX. They want to spin out AdX right away. So step 1 is allow Google Ads to bid into other exchanges, but if AdX is spun out, then that sort of happens anyway. So that first step gets a little confusing. And what this means, and this was a big point in the trial, is that when AdX bids on non-DFP ad servers, it has this tag-based solution that effectively works like the old-fashioned waterfall because it does not give a price. It only gives a yes, no, I want the bid or I don't at a given floor price. And as a result, that's a critical flaw, which doesn't allow other publisher ad servers to optimize. You can't say, well, AdX is $2.10, but Magna is $2.09 or 2011. You can't do that because AdX refuses to give the price. So effectively, by giving the price, which should be trivially easy, even though Google says it's impossible, you should be able to just take that tag, put in your header bidding, and you make the ad server back into what it used to be, which is sort of a dumb vessel for picking the highest price. So that's the biggest deal in the proposal. The second step, this open source thing, I wrote about it in my newsletter this past week, and I've written on Twitter. It strikes me as a bit off in the testimony from competitors like Kevel and like Equitive and AppNexus. No one said in the testimony, well, the real problem is we can't reproduce the algorithm in DFP. No one said that. There was a lot of worry about the algorithm being biased or wrong or giving last look, etc. But no one said it was the actual intelligence that was a problem for competition. So I just kind of am holding judgment on that as to why it's in there. And then the third part, this like eventual multi-year spin out of DFP itself, I think that's really problematic because effectively DFP, after you remove the advantages of AdX and after you effectively prohibit DFP from doing anything transaction oriented, it's not worth anything. It's a near monopoly software product with low margins and no growth. I think that is a problematic part of this plan. Realistically, that you have Google, who is effectively like running this thing like the ugly stepsister. It doesn't care about because it has no strategic value and it has to be spun out. So it's not going to get a lot of innovation or the best product managers. And then they have to limp out into a spin out a couple years out for a product that I think the demand would be minuscule for. I'm not saying this is a bad plan. I just think there are some rough bits that need to be worked out.
Go back to the number two, the sharing the code behind DFP. If it's not going to lead to increased competition and a more level playing field, what's the reason why they're pushing for this?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there is evidence I haven't seen that folks have said it would be a lot easier to transition customers to a competitive ad server if they had this logic. That's possible, but it wasn't in court. And the second possibility is that it's just kind of a assumption of certain people in the tech industry that you have to do that in order to move people over. But I don't think it's the case. When you talk to publishers, especially the ones who testified in court, like News Corp and Daily Mail, about transitioning the ad server, the one and only thing they said was they needed the demand from Google Ads to come in with a price. And then everything was on the table. Then they could look at features and migration plans and forecasting and all the other things you need to do to switch ad servers. No one in testimony said, oh, and the real problem is that like we won't deliver our ads on time the way DFP does, which is what the algorithm does. So I think it's I think it's just, weird.
Got it. Okay. So Google propose remedies for themselves. Let's go through that one. So number one, Google will share real-time bid rates for AdX display ads with all publisher ad servers. Number two, publishers can set their own price floors instead of using Google's pricing rules. And then number three, Google bans first look and last look advantages for display ads, which apparently were already removed in Ads Manager. How impactful would this stuff be?
Well, the first one, the sharing of real-time bids, is similar to the DOJ's proposed remedy. So that matters. I think that the removal of the price floors just goes back to before they enforced the price floors, which was one of the big complaints in the antitrust. So it goes back to where it was, 5-6 years ago. And then the issue here is trust. Like basically, Google is saying, all that bad stuff we did in the past, we're not going to do it again. They're supposedly not doing it now. And you have to trust us, and we'll put ourselves in handcuffs for, I think the proposal was 3 years. So it's kind of a joke, honestly, this Google proposal compared to the seriousness of what they have been not just accused of, but found guilty of as running an illegal abusive monopoly. So for them to give these really milquetoast kind of remedies and say, trust us, court, it just doesn't hold a lot of water, in my opinion.
Seems like the opening of a negotiation, right? The DOJ starts here, Google starts here, and then we see where everything ends up, right?
Yeah, Google's approach to all of these cases is just total slash and burn. Like, absolutely, if you take anything against us, you're damaging national security, you're going to kill publishers. We're the only ones who could possibly operate this technology. And it goes for Chrome and DFP. And I don't know if it's a strategy or if it's a cultural issue of arrogance. It's somewhere in between, it seems. I don't think that their approach gives them a lot of credibility with the court. I think the court kind of sees through this bluster. and to some extent discounts some of the arguments because they're pretty absurd.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, we're going to keep talking about this stuff until it gets finalized. Two other things on the Google front, in case you were thirsty for more. So first is they laid off 10% of the 250 person strong Sandbox team. A surprise to no one, maybe outside of the fact that it's 250 people, given the news about non-deprecation of cookies in Chrome.
250 people is a lot of people. And they only
It
laid
is.
off 10% of them, even though the main reason for the group to exist has seemingly passed.
What do you think happens to the other 225?
Well, they're going to keep working on what they're working on.
I'm kidding. We shall see. Okay. This one may be a little bit juicier. So there is some news reported this week in Bloomberg that Apple is exploring alternatives to Google in search. So as we know, Google pays Apple $20 billion a year for the right to be the default search engine for Safari on mobile. Apple is reportedly seeing searches on Safari fall because users are increasingly turning to AI. So as a result, they are exploring new partnerships with companies like OpenAI and Perplexity. Google closed 7% down on this news. When Google closes down 7%, that is equivalent to $150 billion in market value.
That's a lot of
The market value of all of that
searches.
tech. Yeah. This is a big one. What do you think?
You know, you and I have been talking about this for probably a year, which is, about a year ago, we started saying, well, it's obvious that Google search is going to decline. It's just a matter of when it does and what will be the first sign. And then this fall, we started saying things like, oh, wait, look at this. Google search share fell below 90% for the first time. That was a data point. Maybe it was more like December or January that data point came out. And anecdotally, probably everyone who's listening to this podcast has had conversations with their friends like, oh, I'm not using Google search anymore. I'm switching to blah. We had Taz from Perplexity at our conference talking about how they're building an ad business on their searches. So where's the surprise? And then Eddie Q goes on stand in the Chrome trial and just absolutely takes a knife and shoves it into the ribs of Google.
What a visual.
Really? Oof. Saying that publicly, oh, we're seeing searches decline and we're looking for other options. It took that to wake the markets up to what's really happening.
Yeah, this is going to be another big one to watch. Hey, after our conversation last week, did you try any of the new embedded Gemini tools across Google Workspace or some of the other Google properties?
I posted this on Twitter because it was kind of funny. I was working on a document in Google Docs. I'm a big Google fan. Just for those of people who think I'm some sort of a Google hater, I love Google Drive. I love the Docs. Anyway, so I was working on something and I typed out, "Is Google evil?" That's what I wrote.
I saw that. That's right.
And Gemini pops up as it does. It says, "Do you need help writing?" And I was like, "This is fun. Yeah, sure." So I pressed the button and it gave me 5 paragraphs of pretty balanced analysis of Google's abuses versus the other side of the coin across data and privacy and antitrust. And it really did quite a nice job writing a full essay for me about whether Google is evil or not. And I was kind of impressed with the prose and the thought process.
I didn't do that. I did something different. I hit the button on an email string. And it summarized the conversation and proposed next steps quite well. And that's interesting, right? Because Google is all in our emails. They have all of the data, all the conversations there. So I see the enterprise potential. But gosh, there's so much on the other side of this with respect to search and all these other properties. It's wild.
Yeah, I think Google has a real problem with the execution on some of this stuff. It's not the model. The model is good. It's the way the user interfaces with it. It's like what companies like Meta have gotten so good at is what they call, growth marketing, which is how do you put an offer in front of a consumer that gets them to try something, that gets new products adopted, gets more money out of their wallet. And Google's so bad at that, just outrageously bad at convincing consumers to try something new or change their behavior. And if you're in the Google products, they're just showing these sort of contextless pop-ups that have bad offers that sometimes click through to complicated administrative screens. And it's a real shame that they have such a problem with this, because it's really hurting their adoption of new products.
I mean, we talked about this quite a bit last week, so we don't need to beat it to death. But Google, if you're listening, we got ideas.
We love beating things to death. That's pretty much the theme of this podcast.
Actually, it is. Okay, let's move on to some other stuff. All right, earnings. A couple of things to talk about with earnings this week. Criteo reported revenue was up a bit, but the stock got hammered over a customer change. So their largest client switched to self-serve from managed. Managed service is 20% of their business. So I don't know if this is a canary in the coal mine or just, one thing, but it was quite significant. Stock went down on the news. And they also did address the Uber Eats loss to Instacart over the course of the call as well. So I guess, acknowledging that, it's a meaningful thing, but they seem to say, hey, seems to be a better fit for the customer. Any thoughts on Criteo? We got
well, they have the buoying of the stock from the cookies staying.
Exactly.
Cookies are a big part of it. They're in sort of a Game of Thrones. They're in between the giant retailers who all see advertising as a core part of their business. And so offering what they do, managed services or platform services, is a dangerous position because the customers are often thinking about how to replace them.
Yeah, but they have self-service tools, right? So,
right.
like largely focusing on that, I think is a good move. Viant had good earnings. Viant beats, revenue up 30% year over year. CTV now 45% of total revenue. So good stuff out of Viant. And then AppLovin is back again. So, I mean, God, AppLovin beats revenue up, ad revenue, to be clear, up 71% year over year. They're selling another of their mobile gaming properties to double down on advertising. And Adam is quite serious about buying TikTok. Did you see this post from Adam?
Yeah, I saw it.
I mean, he is talking, they're the biggest independent company in ad tech. They're an extremely important company. They need to do big boy things in order to, move this stock. And I guess buying TikTok is a big boy move. So basically his thesis, and you should read this, we'll put a link in the newsletter, is that all of the data and security concerns hampers TikTok's ability to really monetize and really hyper target. So he thinks that, AppLovin acquires it, does the right thing with respect to data and security, and lets Axon AI, their AI product, run wild. And he thinks he can take TikTok from a $20 billion business to an $80 billion business in 2 years.
He's got a point in that if TikTok were to aggressively look at, let's say, an audience network where they convinced independent apps to put in their SDK, everyone would sound the alarms as the Chinese taking over every app on the App Store and collecting data and fingerprinting, blah, blah, blah. Also, TikTok has, this enormous progress in getting advertisers to build vertical video and to do shopping on their site. Those sort of formats and commerce activities could be leveraged pretty heavily outside of the walls of TikTok. And you can see it as a new ad format and expanding AppLovin's place in commerce. I think it makes a lot of sense, this combination. But obviously the TikTok situation is very unpredictable and political, and it's unclear if rationality will win or if it's more about, closed room deals.
There is undoubtedly people at AppLovin that are close to Adam that listen to this pod. This is an open call to get Adam on this pod, people.
Absolutely.
Get Adam on the pod. We will open the floor. Could be the longest pod. Just come on.
You don't even have to talk about work. Tell us about your hobbies and your family. People just want to hear from you, Adam.
Yes. Starting with these two people. Okay. This is a fun one. LiveRamp Ventures. So for those who don't know, LiveRamp has a corporate venture arm called LiveRamp Ventures. It's under Dave Eisenberg, friend of the pod, and Jimmy Wren, I've gotten to know, published a new market map. So I guess a post-Lumascape, where it's interesting. It's really two things. So number one, it puts forward this idea of how to organize this whole, emerging AI landscape for digital advertising. And then number two, and this is the interesting stuff for us, all of the new companies that are AI native that, are very young. You can organize them in a bunch of boxes. So they did a great job with this. People have started to run wild with it. So Joe Hirsch, we talked about last week from Swivel, he created an encyclopedia out of it using an LLM. Bach took it a step further because Bach thinks that there needs to be just an agentic marketplace map. So he used Claude to create one. This feels like a really good moment for ad tech, right? Like an entirely new landscape, entirely new logos, entirely new companies. I was excited to see this thing. What about you?
I'm a little hesitant to put people in boxes, considering that
Oh,
the
yeah.
boxes themselves are questionable and people are going to break out of their boxes. But it's great to see so many logos and so much innovation around advertising and AI. And I think it's going to keep going. And those boxes are largely going to collide with each other. So I'm not going to invest my personal time in like trying to make sense of it. I'm just going to go with the flow.
It's a good point. No matter what, when you do something like this, there's a lot of people that are going to be mad and a lot of people that disagree. And I feel very sorry for Jimmy's inbox because there are companies that are just like, why are we not in this thing? But somebody needed to, kind of take the first step. So I give them
Where's
a ton
Terry?
of credit.
Terry needs a new slide. Does he have an AI slide? Maybe he does. Terry Kawaja's big event is next Tuesday. Maybe we'll see a new slide from him.
Somebody said this created a lot of conversation. Like, why isn't there a Luma slide for this? And we should hear from Terry directly. But somebody said because there is no origination of like a media standpoint, that's the reason why. And I'm butchering
Sounds,
the explanation
yeah, I think it's just that Terry hasn't gotten around to it. He's a busy guy.
or that. Anyway, all right. So we'll see you next week. Hey, couple quick hits before we call it a day. Liftoff.
Mm,
So it is a mobile app and monetization company. It was the combination of Liftoff and Vungle. Took a PE investment valued at $4.3 billion.
that's a lot. That's a lot of
That's a lot.
liftoff. Yeah.
Yeah. This mobile app space, right? There's still
Well,
apparently a lot of room.
okay. I have two hypotheses for why this happened. And I'm open to hearing about it. Number one is yours, which is mobile app as a space is interesting because it has a feedback loop and it's all performance and people are willing to spend as much as they can as long as it works. And that's why AppLovin's worth so much. That's option one. Option two is that the closed loop companies that do both buy and sell are much more valuable than just buy or just sell. And, this comes sort of a little bit against my career where I built Beeswax as a buy only platform. But it feels as though being a platform on one side or the other limits your ultimate TAM. And it's companies that do both that make the most money. And Liftoff plus, you just said it, Vungle, yeah,
Vungle.
is under KKR, I think, but brought them
Believe
together.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of was able to corner some margin, maybe not corner the market, but corner some margin between buy and sell side and make the valuation go pop.
Yeah. That's a big number. You track this one. IAS is now rating podcasts for Spotify. What you got?
Yeah. So following on a bunch of product news from Spotify trying to make their platform more appealing to advertisers, they announced IAS brand suitability in podcasts. It's similar to what IAS has been doing in other social areas where they look at the content immediately preceding or preceding the ad and evaluate it. So I just thought it was kind of interesting that you can do that now.
Gosh, podcasts have their own, issues as it relates to brand suitability because there's just so many of them. It's a wild west. So it's timely for this type of product. One other thing, and we'll end it with a shout out. So friend of the pod, one of our, I think, best early ones, Jay Friedman, he is handing over the reins at Goodway Group. Jay's been the CEO of Goodway for some time. He's been there for 20 years. It is a 70 plus year old, 80 plus year old business that got its start in direct marketing. And he's built it into one of the largest and best independent agencies. So big shout out to Jay Friedman and congrats and look forward to what you do next.
Yeah, so Jay was a witness at the Google trial. This has nothing to do with Google, but I'll just quote him. So the Google attorneys were grilling him and saying, like, what's the difference between a Square ad on a website and a Square ad on Facebook? Because Google was trying to make the case that it's all the same thing. And he said, well, what's the difference between a Square parcel that has a Hilton on it and a Square parcel that has a Four Seasons on it? And I thought that was a pretty sharp little answer from Jay. So,
Yeah. All right. Let's leave it there. Thank you, Ari. It's been a good week. And we will see some of you next week at Luma DMS. And we'll see all of you on next week's pod.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.